Hello, welcome back. The NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for tonight's Mondo slate. 12 games on Draftkings, 13 on FanDuel. Way too many games. And the thing that's so crazy to me is it seems like ownership is really bunched up on a few plays, some of which are absolutely good and definitely make sense, and some others we could probably fade. Anyways, let's get into it, but before we do, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all for one low price. Come join us. Let's get in. We got baseball season coming up. NBA is still going strong. And let's go. All right. Starting on FanDuel, as always. Gonna try and go through it quick because we got so many games. But highest owned point guard, Russell Westbrook. He is 6K. He's 22% owned. And the thing with good old Westbrook tonight is that there's no Kawhi Leonard, so he is expected to play a few more minutes. When any of those big Clippers players, being George, Leonard, or Harden, are out, Westbrook picks up more minutes. And it's expected that he does tonight. Around 28 minutes or so is what we have projected. Kind of what I thought too. He looks nice. I'm getting a little bit, but I just don't think he should be the highest owned point guard. Next, we got James Harden. Would much rather James Harden, even though he is pushing 9K now. Without Kawhi Leonard, he is almost back to himself. The really prolific fantasy player that we used to see, averaging, right around 1.3 fantasy point per minute, 1.27-ish, I think is what it was. And against this Warriors team where he could absolutely do damage, I think it's very interesting. We've seen him right around 60 quite frequently lately, and runs of 50s and 70s throughout the season. So no problem whatsoever going to him in this spot, even at a little bit higher ownership. Next, Keaton George is popping up. He's 5.3K. He started last game, played 29 minutes. We have him at 30 minutes. He's been right around that mark a lot lately, but at 5.3K, I see why people are going there. I'm just not going there a ton. I just don't think there's a ton of upside at this price for him. And that's my issue. I think on this slate, with, some of these players just having massive upside, it's really hard to go for a guy that doesn't quite have that. Spencer Dinwiddie played 31 minutes last night. Now we have no LeBron James, so he's going to at least be on the court for 30 minutes again, but his usage should be up a little bit more because LeBron is gone. So, he is right around 0.95 fantasy per minute with the Nets, and I would assume he's right around that again in this spot. And now he has the Jazz, which is a decent matchup here, so I don't mind going to Dinwiddie. Can get to a little bit of him, but I don't like him as much as the field does. And pivot wise, I do like D'Angelo Russell. I gotta say that I do worry a little bit about Dinwiddie. Maybe his usage comes down a little bit because Dinwiddie can handle the ball as well. But D'Angelo Russell, without LeBron James this year, is averaging like 1.2 fantasy points per minute, which is absolutely insane for him, at least. I don't believe that's the player that he is, so I would have a hard time giving him that. But it is actually a decent sample size as far as those minutes. So, hard not to kind of give it to him. So I like Russell, but I have obvious issues with Dinwiddie there. So I am being a little more cautious than I would in this spot. I would have been slamming Russell if it wasn't for Dinwiddie, but definitely a little worried. Trae Young. All right. Another small sample size here to deal with, but without Capella and Okongwu on the court, Trae Young has a 1.6 fantasy point per minute. Massive upgrade from his 1.23 over the last 20 starts. So now that is only like 120 minutes or something, so I wouldn't, buy into it totally, but it definitely shows you a solid ceiling possibility here. if he's able to do that, like that's around some of the top point guards in the league. That is pretty much what SGA averages. So there is a real path to him having a big game. Not to mention that he already had a ceiling in the 60s. So I'm very, very interested, and in this spot, maybe a little bit more chance of that ceiling type performance. And at low ownership, I am intrigued. I got to bring up Tyrese Halliburton too. So Halliburton played 34 minutes last game. I would expect he's right around that again. He had a night rest, so it's not like he's on short rest. And the guy has been good all year, 1.45 fantasy per minute. Now he has a good spot versus the Toronto Raptors, 20th or 19th overall versus point guard. So I don't mind going to Halliburton. He's unowned. His prices came down from where it was at 11K, and at any time he could pop. I mean, when he came back for his one game and played 35 minutes, he put up 49 on 17 assists, 21 points. We haven't seen a game like that for him yet, but the guy is pretty much back. He's playing his full allotment of minutes. I wouldn't be too worried about him, and at low ownership, it's only a matter of time till his lower price point really pops, and I think it's an interesting play tonight. On to point guard at, that is yesterday. On to point guard on DraftKings, Keith George, 4,200 is too cheap for him on DK. If he is playing, his 30 minutes, 0.92 fantasy point per minute guy can absolutely get there and crush this 4,200. So totally understand that one. Trey Mann, 5K. Hey, he is kind of that player. He fantasy per minute production 1.02 so far as a starter this season. Don't mind going back there. I did look back through his last couple years when he has got his spot starts. He's done decently. So I'm not too scared off that 5K price at on FanDuel. It's way higher and not really getting to any on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, price probably hasn't came up quite quick enough. Cole Anthony, 3.7K. Are you kidding me? It is a complete dart throw, but there's no Fultz, no Gary Harris. There is a path to him picking up minutes. If he's at 26 minutes, I mean, he could get 10x in this spot. So I think it makes a ton of sense to go to Cole Anthony. And getting over to matchup tool here. So we got Cade Cunningham, we got Cole Anthony, and D'Angelo Russell. So we do have Cole Anthony being an expected starter, which we're not really sure if that's going to happen or not, but it is definitely something to take notice of, because if he does and he's playing 26, he's going to be super high owned and an absolute smash spot on DraftKings. D'Angelo Russell popping up. CJ McCollum is in a good spot. Just not getting to a ton, but I do have to say that at 7.1K, he should absolutely be in your player pool. Great matchup, not high owned, and we know he has a 50-point ceiling, so don't mind that at 7K whatsoever. Shooting guard, James Harden, Keith George, Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson was insanely high owned yesterday, went off, should get minutes again tonight. Played 26. It was a blowout. Could have had a couple more, but I would take that into notice that he only played 26. Even with the starters getting pulled a little bit earlier, it's not like he's on a path to 34 or something. And high ownership for a player that is volatile, kind of depends if his shot's falling or not. I don't love the ownership there. Next, we got Paul George. Everybody's going to Harden, but hey, Paul George gets a real big bump up as well without Kawhi Leonard. The other thing is his minutes have came back up. Played 36 the other night, only 30 on the 12th in a blowout, but it just shows you that his minutes are back. He played 36. Don't mind going to good old PG-13. Should note that there is no Bradley Beal, so Eric Gordon is interesting. Kelly Oubre I like as a pivot. Look, Oubre is just playing an insane amount of minutes. 41, 39, 40. And no Tobias Harris again. I think those minutes are going to be super high once again. So with that kind of minutes, you have to consider a guy, even though it's not in the greatest of matchups versus the Miami Heat. However, there is no Jimmy Butler, no Terry Rozier, so the matchup is a little bit better. They aren't as good on D without Jimmy B, even though Bam Adebayo is the real enforcer here on the team as far as their defense. Without him, their defense drops off a cliff. That Jimmy B, though, definitely gets a little bit worse. Austin Reeves, look, same thing as D'Angelo Russell. He gets a big bump up without good old LeBron. He's over a fantasy point per minute producer without LeBron on the court. Now he's going to step into 35, 36 minutes. I think there's a real path to 40-plus points. We've seen him hit, 50 a couple times this season, and it's a good matchup, so it makes some sense at lower ownership. And got to bring up Buddy Hield a little bit here. Same situation as Oubre. He's been playing a lot of minutes. His usage is also up, but 40 minutes, 36, 36. Can pretty much assume he's going to be at 36 tonight. And seems like he's kind of had the green light to fire away. 13 attempts, 16 attempts, 21 attempts. Has the ball in his hand a lot. He's been given some assists and some rebounds. So I don't mind going back to Buddy Hield, even though his price is up to 7.1K. Shooting guard on DK, Duncan Robinson. His price here, 4,400's bit too cheap. 8,100 for Brandon Ingram, 6,300 for Hield. That is too cheap. And Oubre, 6,200. We just got a lot of mispriced players on this slate. So what's going on is ownership is lumping, on certain players. Now, matchup-wise, we got Brandon Ingram, Kyrie Irving, Duncan Robinson, Cody Martin all at the top. And we don't even need Brick Holiday. He's super cheap, but you can't play him today. Kyrie is interesting. 8.9K, been around, 50 points, and in a great matchup versus the Spurs. Now, if this game stays close, it's a super high-scoring game, and you can definitely see Irving getting into the 50s, and he's super low owned. Don't love it. Don't hate it. Will have a little bit in my player pool for sure. On to small forward, we got Royce O'Neal, 4,100, 30% owned. He came off the bench, played 30 minutes last night with Bradley Beal getting hurt. I would expect 28, 29-ish minutes in this game again, and versus the Pistons. Makes some sense to want to go there. The one thing I would say, 0.8 fantasy per minute guy. So if he doesn't get the minutes, there's no ceiling. We really do need him to get 28, 29, 30 minutes for a viable ceiling there. But at 4,100, totally makes sense. He's super cheap. Rui Hachimura, 5.4K, moves into like a 0.85 fantasy per minute guy without LeBron on the court. He's going to be able to get his shots. He is going to be trying to score. It's a good matchup versus the Jazz. Get why people are going there. Duncan Robinson, we talked about. Paul George, we talked about. Michael Porter Jr., it is unlikely that Jamal Murray plays tonight. And with that, MPJ just gets a little bit of a bump up. He's in a big spot here versus the Kings. He's at home. It's a pace-up spot. There's a lot to like in this spot. Definitely has the chance of one of his ceiling games with no Jamal Murray. His scoring opportunities are just going to go up. Oubre, Reeves, we have talked about, and we will move on. Small forward. Royce O'Neal, Rui Hachimura, Jason Tatum, all of them are fairly interesting there. So we didn't talk about Jason Tatum. We talked about him yesterday, though, and he went nuts. Look, the guy's been playing extremely well lately. Jaylen Brown's questionable, too. If Jaylen Brown's out, he gets a bump up. It isn't the best spot versus the Nets, but Tatum's one of the few players in the league where it really does not matter his spot. Don't mind going there. At under 10K, I'm shocked he's still under 10K. Matchups. We got Josh Green here, Aaron Naismith, Caleb Martin, Champagny. It's not quite the who's who for matchup there, but you could do worse than going through some of these guys. Caleb Martin should get a bump up in usage without Jimmy Butler. Aaron Naismith has been very good lately, but his price is just a little higher than I really, really want. But into power forward. Now, this is the big question for tonight. Do you or do not play Bruno Fernando? Look, he is going to be 80+% owned. I know we have 30 here. We have a little bit of a cap on games or slates this high for people, but this situation, he is 4,000. He hasn't started so far this season, but he plays at like a 1.14 fantasy per minute clip. Now, we have him for 26 minutes right now. I do have to have one caveat here. The max he's played all season is 17 minutes. He put up 25 in that. He can put up points in bunches, but just understand that he's only played 17 minutes in a game. Don't know if I fully expect him to go to 27. However, even if I put him down at like 22 minutes and make my own projection for him, I'm still going to get a ton of him. He still is over 6x value at that point. So this is one of those spots where you might just have to eat the chalk, and it's going to be very, very chalky. With that being said, I do think that Jaylen Johnson is an incredibly good pivot off of Fernando. I do think there is a chance that the Hawks just play a lot of more small ball. Fernando himself isn't that big. He's only 6'9" or 6'10", 6'9" on some sites. That's about what Jaylen Johnson is. He's just not as heavy as Fernando. But also another small sample size of like 108 minutes. Jaylen Johnson goes up to 1.2 fantasy per minute without Capella and Okongwu. So there is a path for Jaylen Johnson to be the one you need. Now, my first run of lineups, pretty much all of them had either Johnson or Fernando in it. I think you could play both due to the fact that Fernando could get there in 20 minutes. And I might play both a little bit, but I'm not going to have very much of both guys in the same lineup. I kind of do think that it's going to be one or the other. But it absolutely could be both. So this is one of the rare situations where I don't mind playing a center and a power forward together when they're both going through rebounds, and rebounds are a big point or big portion of their points in a given night. So I think Jaylen Johnson is just a great pivot. He's going almost low owned. He gets a huge bump up too, and we have no idea what the minutes are going to be like for Fernando. With that being said, even if you brought this 22, he would still look very good and pop up in a ton of optimizers. Royce O'Neal we talked about. Nikola Jokic went absolutely nuts last night. Put up 40 burger. He's still only 3,900. We have him expected to start. He has started a lot without Jimmy Butler in the lineup. Started with Jimmy Butler in the lineup. Right now we have him for 26 minutes. I mean, if he's getting 26 minutes, then him and Fernando are kind of a coin flip situation. where Fernando's a better per minute guy, but I think there's more of a path for extra minutes for Jovic than there is for Fernando. Both of them in good spots. Don't mind going to either of these guys. Real interesting spot because so much of power forward tonight is gonna be with a few guys. Rui we talked about, Michael Porter we talked about, and getting over to DraftKings power forward, we got Royce O'Neal, Nikola Jovic, and Rui Hachimura. 3.1K for Jovic is crazy cheap. I mean, when he starts, he plays 18, 19 minutes. That alone can get there. And then he has those ceiling games where he's able to play 33 plus. And when he gets 30 minutes, he does well. Rui, too cheap. And then good old Rui is just too cheap on DraftKings, so you can absolutely go there. Do got to bring up the fact that KD and Devin Booker don't have Bradley Beal tonight, so their ceilings both go up, their floors both go up. Do have to bring up the fact that to the minus 13 there. One of the things that I literally just remembered is that DraftKings doesn't have the late game. So I want to just scroll through real quick and make sure Clippers and Warriors are not showing up on the matchup tool so we can talk about them as well. Okay, cool. So matchup tool for power forwards, we got Rui Hachimura, KJ Martin. Tobias Harris is out again. KJ likely starts 26 minutes last time. He can get it done in 26, 28 minutes at 46K. Like it, don't love it. Miles Bridges, no Rozier, no Ball. I mean, he absolutely should be priced this much. I'm getting to a little bit. He has a huge ceiling. Just don't know if he's going to continue to get this 38-minute mark. But, hey, he looks good again. Don't mind going there whatsoever. And on to the center spot. So, high owned, we got Bruno Fernando, Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson. All of these guys deserve to be there. AD as well. One of the things I will say about AD is he doesn't get a huge bump up without LeBron. He gets, 0.02, 0.03 fantasy point per minute extra. So I wouldn't rush to him just because there's no LeBron. I think the guys that really get the bump up are D'Angelo and Reeves more, or Hachimura more than AD. But AD is absolutely always in play. So you can definitely go there. Bam Adebayo, no Jimmy B. He gets a big bump up. He had 50 points in 31 minutes last night, 54 and 34 the time before. Both of those are without Jimmy B. Hard not to kind of like this spot for him versus the 76ers that have Paul Reed and not Joel Embiid. So very intrigued by Bam. Very intrigued by Jaren Jackson, as Jaren Jackson is pretty much the entire team right now for Memphis, as they are just in complete shambles. We know he has a big ceiling due to his blocks and his steals. So I don't mind it, just don't love it. There's so many places to go at the center spot tonight, including Nikola Jokic. Jokic has no no Jamal Murray, likely no KCP. His fantasy points per minute goes up to like 1.8 without those guys. So there is a gigantic ceiling versus the Kings, which he is going to have to play as many minutes as he possibly can. He put up 82 versus them earlier in the season. We've seen other big highs from him versus the Kings. Don't mind going back here whatsoever. He is absolutely probably going to touch the ball on 95% of their plays when he's in the game or their possessions. So don't mind going to Jokic whatsoever. And that's pretty much where all my ownership is going at center. The fact is that Fernando is just taking so much ownership for me right now that there's not a ton of centers I like. There's a decent amount of centers I like, but those are where I'm really getting ownership. I love the spot for Jonas Valanciunas, but 18 minutes last game. His minutes have been all over the place. If he gets extra minutes in this spot, he's going to crush. Zion is questionable, so understand that. Nurkic played 25 minutes. I think he at least gets 26 without Beal on the court. I think he is used a little bit more. He obviously has a big ceiling when he gets it going. Could always go there. I just don't absolutely love the spot. One thing I do want to bring up is Nick Richards. Nick Richards is a 7-footer, and Hawks are pretty much all 6'10 and under. And the only guy that's 6'10 is Fernando. Then everybody else is really 6'9", 6'8-ish or below. So he's definitely going to have a height advantage today. Maybe an extra block or a few extra rebounds coming his way. The one issue I have, since the trade deadline, his minutes have come down 25, 26 minutes the last 2 games, whereas it was 28, 30, 32. So I do have a little bit of hesitancy with going to him due to just a little bit of less minutes. So just know that if you do want to go there. But all in all, super exciting slate here tonight. So many different ways. I would say don't worry about getting a little different tonight. You may have to, play for Fernando, but outside of him, there's plenty of ways to get different on this slate. Good luck, guys. I'm not going to be back tomorrow because it is only a 3-game slate, but I will be back next week after the All-Star break. Good luck. Let's make some money, and I'm so happy that this run of games towards All-Star break is over because these games have just been that National Blowout Association, and I want to get back to competitive basketball after the break. Have a good one, guys. Peace.